Right then guys, hello, and I'm going to kick off with a story today. Right then, so we have a hospital ward, and at the end of the hospital ward is a window. Now there are a row of beds, and the guy next to the window had optimal view out of the window, whereas the guy next to him couldn't see anything. And he was incapacitated. He couldn't get up and look through the window, so he relied on the guy who was able to see through the window to hear the information of what was going on, because he was very curious. And of course he was very poorly, so you know, the man who was by the window used to tell him every day for weeks and weeks what was going on, and he developed stories about the people he could see and what the weather was like and how nice it was and what the nurses were doing outside and what sort of cars and traffic there was, and just general stuff to cheer him up. Yeah, so after maybe a month, the guy by the window was discharged. He was able to move about and he was discharged, and the man next to him was able to move a bed up, so he requested to be moved by the window, so the nurses moved him. He looked through the window, and what could he see? A brick wall. Yeah. Moral of the story is, well, you know what it is, don't you? Positive information helps, doesn't it? So it benefited both guys, because the guy who couldn't see through the window actually recovered much quicker because he was being fed positive information, and the guy who was looking through the window, he was obviously having to exercise his imagination, and it worked for both of them. Yeah. So there we go, that's my story today, and really what I want to talk about is some red flags that I'm seeing. Well, to be honest with you, you see it in the mainstream media. There's always doom and gloom, there's always shit, there's always something to keep people scared. Okay, it's a technique which even the Jehovah's Witnesses use. Now if you know anything about them, they have a goal at the end of the day to spread their Christian message. They're an elite group and often called a cult because of their blinkered thinking. They like to keep their members in check, and they like to keep them active and carrying on with spreading the word. And the way they do this is using a sense of urgency. The world is ending soon. You can see how degraded it is. Therefore, you have to keep working, because you will get your reward when you get to paradise earth. Yeah. Believe me, I've had some run-ins with the Jehovah's Witnesses. They drove a wedge between me and a family member, and ended up our family splitting. Okay. Now I see this reflected in the prepper community as well. Okay. Not only do they use this sense of urgency, but they also use dismal news at times to make sure people have the right picture painted in their minds so they can continue prepping. Yeah, and watching their channels. Not all preppers are like that, but there are a few on the mainstream and a few other that pass information that they've gleaned from the internet or from mainstream media, not really done any geopolitical thinking, and then started to spread the message even further, which you can tell when you watch these guys that there's an imperative to their message, the urgency in their message. Okay. And yeah, I get sucked in. I do follow along with it for a little while, and then I stand back and have a look and think exactly what they're saying. Okay, and then I'll do some fact checking. Okay, but well, one of these was recently about Russia. Okay, now I'm not going to mention the channels that have talked about this, but I'd actually watched Vladimir Putin talk at Valdai, and he was putting his opinions over, talking to the general crowd of where Russia's stance is, which is, of course, you've got to look at both sides. Now I know a lot of Americans are absolutely terrified of the Russians, they're terrified of the Chinese, they're terrified of their own shadow sometimes. I think they're kept in that type of status quo, that imperative, and I'm pretty damn sure of it, because the stuff I see, they panic very, very easily. Okay, so I looked at Putin, and he was talking about Russia's stance about the family values and how they want to keep those, although the Western world, or the other side, the West, want to destroy family values through certain ideologies. And I do agree with him, it does seem to be happening that way. He also drew a line in the sand saying that you need a nationality, you need a national identity, although Russia is able to commit themselves to the global warming issue, yeah, which, okay, that's their stance, that's what he's saying. He's a spokesman of the country. He isn't responsible for absolutely everything, he's just the front man, yeah. And yeah, then he talked about the economic end of, or should I say, the end of the Western economic system, which, yeah, I think we all agree on it. It's coming, isn't it? Even YouTubers that have nothing to do with prepping are talking about it. So, yeah, watch this space. But what I find abhorrent is preppers that tend to be narcissistic more than anything, because what they're doing is they're using this message to keep their followers tuned in, yeah. And the way they do that is to keep the blinkers on by telling them the story through the window, or portraying the way the world is by looking through that window and giving that narrative. It could be different. It could be very, very different. Not all preppers are the same. Not all preppers are fearmonger. Some do. Some are very good at it, and then they'll say they don't. Okay, but you can tell which ones are, because they're the ones that slowly isolate themselves further and further down the rabbit hole, and they do have short-term thinking. Others will sit there and claim their authorities on world politics, but they tend not to show both sides of the story. They just infer that, for instance, Russia is to blame for one thing or another. Okay, now I'm not sticking up for Russia. I do understand their culture a little bit more than maybe some people do, and a lot less than others. Okay, but it's always creating division. And I do seem to find this more with Americans. They like the bunkers. It's in the Cold War, for instance, or even now. Atlas shelters are putting more bunkers up for people, aren't they? Because they seem to think it's the best way to go is underground when the shit happens. And it is such a cause for separation. Very much a type of thing where it's a status quo, not only from the mainstream media, but also sheep who watch prepper channels and just follow the same media in a different way. Yeah, it's that separation of splitting us from them, which I think is the wrong way to go. Personally, I think we have to be fully involved in community and with the people around us, and not cause separation. Yeah, we're all part and parcel of the same game at the end of the day, and we're all going to go through the same things. Yeah, fair enough. You've got your preps ready, you've got yourself ready, but does that mean you have to run off into the wilds and camp out if something, or there's an inclination of something happening? Or do you actually paint a better picture for people to make sure that things will be okay? Because the difference between preppers and the Jehovah's Witnesses is the Jehovah's Witnesses have a purpose to what they're doing. They are going to be in paradise earth at the end of the day. This is their goal. Although it may be to you seem fictitious, it's real to them. They believe that. But within the prepping community, it's just get ready, that's it. This is all the shit that's happening. I'll keep you in that state of urgency. And what's the end goal? Don't know. Yeah. Personally, I think it's time to call the bullshit out for what it is. When you see the Chicken Littles on YouTube that you think they're displaying a red flag, is actually tell them it's not trolling, although some guys might take it as such. It's actually pointing it out. Hang on, wait a minute, guy, that probably Russia's putting troops on the Ukrainian border because there's NATO activity there. Maybe they want to actually, you know, show that they have borders rather than being walked all over, yeah. Which has been mentioned recently, but it always seems to be, oh, Russia's the bad guy, oh, they're being aggressive, but are they being defensive? That's what you've got to ask yourself. That's with all issues. That's with all issues, okay? And this includes financial information, because don't forget, on YouTube, people are very manipulative. They will tell you the financial system is collapsing, the stock market is collapsing, or things are moving one way or another. And I'm seeing this with Peter Schiff as well. He's been around for years saying this. Mike Maloney as well, okay, gold and silver dealer. But are they manipulating the information to direct you in one way, to buy stuff from them, or to influence the markets? This you don't know. I would be suspicious in the first instance, yeah. and then be cautious in the second instance of whatever information you're given. Okay, but to me, I have a dilemma really, and it is the title of this YouTube channel, because I find that I'm not thinking the same way as the average prepper who has standards to be in their group, their group of their community, because I don't think the same way as they do. I don't generally want to fall for the bullshit. I don't want to spend all of my life in the imperative or the catastrophic thinking, because it's counterproductive. All you're doing is panicking all the time. But I do think that it's something to be addressed. Yeah. Why run away from society and make your own community? Because there's enough preppers to do that. Why do it? Why not involve yourself completely in society and actually change society with your thinking? Yeah. Because what you think is how you influence people. And as I say, I'm calling out bullshit on quite a few preppers. I could spend hours and hours picking through videos and then pointing things out. Well, I find it pointless. I think that you yourself have to develop critical thinking and not accept everything that is presented to you. Not in the way of the way the events are happening around the world. You have to work it out for yourself, and you have to get to the truth of it. If you're not there, do you know it's true or not? You don't. General things like prepping, getting your gear ready, that's a different matter. Yeah, if you want to follow the tradition of stocking up and protecting your territory, then so be it. That's your choice. But make wise choices, guys. Don't just believe anything that people tell you. Actually, critically think about what you've been told by every single prepper that's on YouTube. Yeah, even the old grannies that are telling you that you should put certain things in jars to store away. Is the sugar that they're using to store, is it going to be detrimental to your health at the end of the day or not? I think this what sets me apart from most people is I'm a bit of a goat. I'm not a sheep. I never have been a sheepy. I do question everything, and I hope you also display goatish behaviour as well. Yeah, don't just accept what you're told, because some of it is just clickbait. Some of it's narcissism, and others guys are just seeking approval for what they're doing. Yeah, and that's the anti-Vias. Yeah, there's no need to scream and shout about it and give up your job because it's been mandated. You have to make your own decisions on that. It's not up to anybody else. Although I can imagine a few people are very curious to see how it all ends up. But short-term thinking always ends up as a comedy show, doesn't it? Yeah, and I'm not mentioning the prepper that I'm talking about. There's a couple of them are like that, but one of them specifically, he's now finished his job, which is why. Yeah, if that's his moral stance, it's his moral stance, but why expect anybody to follow him, especially from the internet point of view? I do not know. But anyway, guys, it's coming up to Christmas, and if I put any more videos up, then so be it. If not, I really, at this point in time, have some of my own personal choices to make. They're not crises, it's just changes. There's massive changes in my life, as well as around the world, but the dynamics of my life is changing, therefore I have to adjust to it, and I have to make decisions what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to leave it till after Christmas before I do anything else. And viewers that watch me on my other channel know exactly what's happened recently. Yeah, that set me back a bit, and I have to work something out. I have to do a workaround, and it's going to take some time. So anyway, guys, messages, well, there's two here. Always be positive on your outlook, and always give a good picture to people who need to recover. Yeah, and just don't fall for the bullshit. Yeah, that is all. That's all I've got to say. Anyway, until the next time we meet, do svidaniya. That means until the next meeting, by the way, in Russian. And I am just joking. Yeah, all right, see ya.